everybody, welcome to another episode of the Healthtech Pigeon podcast, where we break down the health tech news so you don't have to. With me today, I'm James, by the way, should start there, co-founder of SomX. I'm James and I do things. With me today, I have got Jessica from the SomX team, Daisy from the SomX team, and Adama producing for us. Welcome, guys. Today, we're going to be talking about a big raise for longevity, talking about the NHS and what they should be prioritising timely around election time or post-election time as we are now, and a Nature paper that actually says digital health works, which is fantastic for all of us in the space, obviously. But yeah, first of all, Jessica, Daisy, welcome. How are you guys doing?
Enjoying the first sunny day we've had in what feels like years, but maybe a few weeks. Obviously, you've got to start with the weather. I don't feel like there's anything any more interesting than that going on right now. Okay, no, I'm lying. Actually, something exciting has happened because rather last minute, alongside our friends Google Cloud, we decided that we should put on a summer party for Healthtech. And so we did that. We only really got our ducks in a row, I want to say like 3 days ago a push. And it's next week and I'm really hoping for some good weather. And we have 150 spaces and quite shockingly had over 500 registrations. So we're a bit sad because we're not going to get to see all of our friends. And so we're really sorry for everyone who didn't manage to get a ticket this time. It just goes to show that we need to find a bigger venue for next year, which we will endeavour to do. But it's going to be fun. So I'm excited to see the 150 of you that do have a ticket. It'll be fun. See you there. How are you doing, Daisy?
I'm doing great, thank you. I feel like I'm just getting over this a bit of a cold I've seemed to have brought back from Glastonbury. It is my whole personality now, and I will tell everyone about it for the next 6 months. I was going to say,
any opportunity to just drop that you've been in Glastonbury, like literally.
It's, you know, don't want to be trite, but it's life-changing. It is the ultimate festival. No, it was really good. I really enjoyed it. I think I will wear some more comfortable shoes and maybe just get a bit more sleep, not because I didn't try. I don't know. It's
You're just so excited. So excited.
There was so much going on. It was hard to get everything in. But yeah, so I'm just getting over this cold. So hopefully I'm not too snotty on this podcast this week.
Yeah, you're really struggling to be sympathetic with you there, but as obviously really good employers, we are sympathetic to you and hope that you're okay, and we're doing everything we can to support you in your time of need. Full disclosure.
Absolutely. And if you are ill, you should take a day off and you should not be working, etc. for legal reasons.
Log off immediately, Daisy.
Yeah, she's not forced to be here.
Luckily, most of my illness was over the weekend, so.
Excellent. Right, health tech. Let's do it. Cool. Our first story today is basically celebrities want to live forever. 53 million quid has been raised by Function for personalized health testing backed by celeb investors Matt Damon, Pedro, Pascal and Kevin Hart. They're focusing on preventative medicine and longevity. Jessica, Daisy, you have thoughts?
My thoughts are generally just how, obviously, celebrities are everywhere. I feel like they're ubiquitous, but, you know, I feel like these kind of things started with football most recently and the buying into health tech. And I know this, you know, probably happens way more than I realise, but it just feels like, you know, what is better than a company to get celebrity backing? Like, and it's just happening everywhere, it seems. I think even Kim Kardashian has been advertising for a full body MRI scan.
Which of course we all need. Who better to advertise that than Kim Kardashian herself?
The ultimate selfie.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting. And actually, it's worth saying that the founder of Function Health, which is the company who has raised not an insignificant $53 million, is a doctor called Mark Hyman. And I actually follow him. So I didn't realise that this was connected with the story until I was having a look earlier. But yeah, I follow him on Instagram, and he is a super interesting character in the sense that he is a doctor. He's very, very focused on, funnily enough, functional medicine. But I'm not surprised that something he's doing has got endorsement from celebrities and the likes of Matt Damon, Kevin Hart, etc. From memory, I'm pretty sure he is in the School of Health, the Goop School of Health. So, this subscribes to kind of the same sort of thinking as Gwyneth Paltrow and all of that kind of thing, which is not, inherently bad. But, and I have to say, full disclosure, I do like some of the Goop products, but he is a little bit controversial, I think, at times, with his views on functional medicine. And I think, but then that draws attention. I think my understanding is he has celebrity clients and that kind of thing. And I'm looking at his Instagram now. He's got 3 million followers. I was going to say, how hard is it to raise that much money when you've got that many followers? I'm not sure the two things correlate, but the fact is he's a doctor. He's been in this space a while. And I don't think it's super surprising. But one thing that occurred to me as I was reading about the company is James, in jest, said that we were going to talk about celebrities who want to live forever. And the company is really focused on what it calls preventative medicine and longevity. And I think the term preventative medicine is a really interesting one because it's actually thrown around a lot in healthcare at the moment. And it's talked about as this kind of elixir to solving the problems that healthcare are facing at large. I've heard pharma companies talk about getting into preventative medicine. I've talked about how actually preventative health is a solution to support the NHS function much better. But the way that they're talking about preventative medicine, I think, is quite different to the way that Function Health is talking about preventative medicine in the sense that I think when in the healthcare world, we consider preventative medicine to be less about very optimizing the health of the already well and more about optimizing the health of the people who are at risk of getting unwell. It's the people who are not yet unwell but are likely to do so, and therefore that creates burden on health systems and medicines and therapies and that kind of thing. And so I think it can be confusing when we talk about preventative health, when what we actually mean is, yes, it is preventative, but it's actually about health optimization. I think health optimization and longevity go hand in hand. But I think actually, when I think about my favorite subject, or one of, which is health equity, I think we do a disservice almost, where actually preventative health is a lot about tackling the needs of people who are at risk of entering the health system when actually they shouldn't need to, versus health optimization, which is the worried well and the wealthy getting healthier. And so I think when we use the term preventative health and preventative medicine in a ubiquitous way like that, I think it does a disservice to what we actually think it means, if that makes sense. Because a company that is focused on helping healthy people live forever and rich people live forever is great. But, I would love to see impact on, supporting people who really need support to get healthier and stay well for longer. So it'd be nice to think that we could attract this kind of funding to those kinds of problems. That's just my 5 cents.
Yeah, I've got a lot of thoughts on this. I think the preventative medicine side of what you say, I think, is absolutely right, because when I think of preventative medicine, I actually start at like housing, education, social prescribing, screening programs, health literacy, like all of these things that really raise the floor, not kind of extend the ceiling of like at that top end. Like it's strange that preventative medicine is being used to describe like the sniffles. And it's like, no, I'm actually trying to prevent like infant mortality, actually. Like I'm actually trying to prevent things that are like seriously bad, not like things that are just like slightly annoying, like plantar fasciitis or something. Like I don't know, maybe that is a bit glib. The other thing to like, I guess, play the devil's advocate on this a little bit is that I don't know how much those individuals actually know about where their money is moving to. I don't know how close they are to their investment decisions versus like their family office, which I assume a lot of these people actually have. Like, they probably have teams of people on this stuff, but that said, you'd expect them to at least have final decisions or at least put those family offices on what they're interested in, which this does kind of reek of. But the other thing that interests me on this is, Daisy, you mentioned football, like the takeover of Wrexham by Ryan Reynolds, etc. You know, I've heard Ryan Reynolds talk about this in the sense of, you know, one of the advantages he had coming into Wrexham is his knowledge of marketing and storytelling to help that company tell stories better, to attract more investment, more customers, to build a brand. And that's the value that he brought alongside simply the money to buy the company, invest in the company. So he was bringing a lot of that himself. And I think actually, rather than dismiss celebrity coming into health tech, I think again, we can actually look at it and go, well, there are plenty of benefits. We're seeing the rise of healthcare influencers that are, you know, here Karan Rajan talking about wanting to, you know, get involved in health tech startups. And I believe he is in, you know, helping out health tech startups now and that kind of thing. There's definitely a role of putting these two things together. It's just that what we might have to deal with this somewhat slightly uncomfortable. Like, those celebrities are just going to what is being thrown at them. They see healthcare as aesthetics and the beauty industry and living forever. And that's what they see of health tech. They don't know that there's deep biotech going on that's trying to resurrect the woolly mammoth, that if they're interested in that, they don't even know that stuff exists. And goodness, if they did, they probably would invest in that simply because it's hilarious. But also, if we showed them what can actually be done at a wider human level with health tech and the things that people are trying to achieve, then perhaps we'll bring celebrity or influencers or whatever it is that are going to bring like real storytelling and marketing knowledge and experience and simple ability because of the channels that they own, and we can make the whole space a bit better. So there's that as well. And maybe to some extent we have to see this kind of, I don't know whether I believe this myself, but I know it's an argument that with longevity and everything, and, you know, splitting hairs on like, you know, millimoles of potassium and all this sort of stuff, shades of normal, like maybe we have to just deal with some of this for that kind of analogy where you go, well, there's people working on like the tight engineering of F1 cars. And eventually that technology, those millions of patents that get done on F1 cars actually do eventually increase road safety because something clicks and, you know, that technology trickles down. But then, you know, let's not get into the trickle down economics argument. I think we've just done away with that party for a while. So I think, yeah, that's a broad constellation of opinions. I'm perhaps getting a little bit too comfortable on this podcast.
I think you both brought up some quite interesting points that I was also thinking, is that, just going with what you said, James, is that I really do hope that, you know, using these big celebrity names next to these like health tech products and just everything in general, is that I hope they are bringing something more than just their name, because they're at a position where they can be doing quite a lot. They have, you know, a lot of money. I'm sure they use that money and that time to research, or at least pay people to research for them. And I really hope that they see this more than just, you know, like a money grab, and they actually, you know, see this as something that could really help people. And, you know, this is for like the worried well or for the rich. And looking at how much it is, I think it's about $500 a year, $42 a month, to give people access to 100 lab tests, or over 100 lab tests. And that seems, obviously in the UK, that seems like expensive. I feel like I would never pay that kind of money. I don't have that kind of money. Maybe if I had that kind of money, maybe it'd be a different question. But I do also wonder if this is somehow bridging a gap. So I did quickly look at how much like the average health insurance is in the US each month, and it is a couple $100. Whereas this is $42 per month. Could this bridge a gap for people who might find it a struggle to pay for good healthcare insurance in the US and go, well, actually, I can pay $42 per month, and any little niggles that I might have, I have access to these like 100 lab tests. So I think that is, well, as we can talk about how it's for the worried well, and there is obviously lots of other more important issues. I do think this could be something that could bridge the gap in American healthcare, but I don't know too much
It
about
sadly
that
wouldn't
kind of
help
stuff.
you if it showed up that you needed anything done, because then you just have to go and pay for that. So,
but at least I guess it's that kind of for the worried well, that you'd be able to start that process from somewhere.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point in the sense that whilst you're right, James, that ultimately if it did find something, you maybe save money on the diagnostics, but you won't be saving money on the treatment. You've got to then obviously go and have the treatment. But there is also something about the fact that not all tests result in a diagnosis. And in best case scenario, everything's fine. And so it gives people that reassurance without additional premiums on their insurance. So I guess that, that could be a benefit in that respect. It puts people's mind at rest without the additional costs associated with perhaps going through insurance or premiums going up or that kind of thing. And so it could reduce the need to rely on going down that route that perhaps could change what their premium look like in future.
I have heard like anecdotal people talk about how their insurance won't cover some really basic tests like vitamin D tests and stuff like that. So I guess, having to go through all the loops and the rigmarole of going to the doctors and trying to get basic tests covered by your insurance without, if they don't feel like they have good cause for doing that testing, that's where this could come in.
So one thing that is interesting is that at the bottom of this article, it gives you like a related article. And the related article is that Kim Kardashian touts Pronuvo's full body MRI scans. Now, obviously full body MRIs are controversial to say the least. Very, very credible people are advocating for them. And similarly, very credible people for a long time have certainly thought the opposite. I just wanted to bring that up just to reiterate Daisy's joke that you may have missed. Kim Kardashian touting the full body MRI is basically the ultimate selfie, as you described it, which I just thought is a fantastic way of describing the sort of vanity associated with or perhaps hypochondriasis associated with like a full body MRI. But the full body MRI is the ultimate selfie ? What a good title for an exploration that would be. Right, our second story today is from The Guardian, titled NHS urged to prioritise cancer care basics over tech and AI magic bullets. We've heard a lot, haven't we, recently, that AI can solve everything, it can do everything, it should be everywhere. And of course, in healthcare, we've been subject to that boom as much as anybody. I've been doing a lot of content myself on this, just saying like, just because AI can be everywhere, should it? I've talked a lot about talking therapies, and perhaps we shouldn't be putting AI there, but there are arguments that we should. And at least we're talking about this now. At least we're sort of beyond the initial peak of the hype cycle, it seems. But prioritizing cancer care basics over tech and AI. Daisy, what do you think?
So, this article says how the NHS has not met its target for 85% of patients to start treatment within 2 months since December 2015. So I agree, like AI is a wonderful tool, but partly we need to get care started. We now, AI can help diagnose, but what does that really matter if it's taken so long for people to then start their treatment? And, it's something that, will this new change in government, it'll be quite interesting to see if that statistic changes. I hope it does. I wouldn't matter which government it happens under, but that statistic needs to change because, was it 1 in 2 people now diagnosed with cancer? It's just a really worrying situation to be in, that it can take so long to get that care started, really.
Do you know what this reminds me of? What comes to mind for me is that I did a podcast with Garlib, who's the founder of Written Medicine. And there was a throwback episode on the Healthtech podcast recently about this as well. And that's a perfect example of, you can have the most high-tech equipment. You can even have, actually, an almost perfect system. But if the instructions before your scan are not written in a language that you understand, you can turn up to that scan, not nil by mouth, not have the scan, not be diagnosed with a cancer, and like that Romanian child, lose your life simply because you didn't understand the language. So the referral letter and the instructions that were sent to you just weren't in your first language. And that's, a perfect example of this. You can have all the best tech and AI in the world, but if you're not sat on a foundation of a solid system of basics of treatment, then the whole thing becomes pointless. And that's really what comes to mind for me here. And they talk about delays in treatment in this article and that kind of thing. And I can believe it, the sort of technocentric approach that they talk about, and a sharply worded warning that novel solutions, such as new diagnostic tests, are wrongly hyped as magic bullets. Yeah, it's sobering, this, for us in the tech industry, I think, because we can, me particularly, I can get so excited about new technology and I can see how it fits in and all that sort of stuff. But, having been a ground floor clinician, the whole time, I do struggle to get as excited as most people, because I just know how difficult it is to adopt things properly and build things into a clinical workflow, because ultimately it needs to work for patients, and it damn sure needs to work for the clinicians and everybody that works in a hospital, if you're going to bring something in. So, yeah, interesting.
It makes me wonder. I'm just, to your point, Daisy, we've obviously had a new government in the last week, and yeah, it makes me wonder how they will what the big priorities they're going to kind of come out of the gates with will be, but also how they articulate those. Because I think you're right, it's really easy to get caught up in the shiny, sparkly idea of technology being this, I've used the word already today, elixir for, all problems. But, and, we've had funds specifically for AI innovation, bringing AI innovation into even cancer diagnostics, as you said. But actually, I wonder if the emphasis there is off, and actually it's more about looking at the bigger picture and the priority and what's needed to address that, as you say, James, to fix the foundations. But what are all of the different elements that are required there? Where does technology fit in to genuinely solve a problem, if we are indeed talking about technology? But what are the solutions that we actually need? And first of all, what are the problems that actually need to be solved in a really granular level? And then what are the solutions to that? And where does technology fit within that? Rather than an emphasis on technology as a almost segment of its own and bringing that into the healthcare space.
Well, it's funny you say that, because literally, was it yesterday or was it today that Wes Streeting has launched a warts and all probe into the state of the NHS to tell hard truths about what needs fixing. And he's appointed Lord Darcy to conduct said probe. Did you know that?
No, I did not know that. But
you described it. You got the same idea.
I feel I'm Mystic Meg. Maybe he needs maybe he needs me involved in this probe. I think I'd be quite good at it. I quite like a bit of investigation. But call me Mystic Meg for Healthtech. I'll take it.
With these kind of like polar opposite issues where we've got all this sparkly new AI and we've got all these companies creating all this wonderful AI and funding and money, and there's so much money going into that. And actually, at the crux of it, at the NHS, they don't have the right resources for starting cancer treatment early. And it feels a bit dystopian. And I feel like it's these kind of issues that you hear about where it's like, oh, look at all these wonderful things. Let's distract you with all these wonderful, shiny, amazing things. But actually, the reality is that you still can't get cancer treatment. And it just feels like this has happened for too long, and not that we should slow the progress of like AI or machine learning and all those wonderful things, but, let's not forget about everything else. Because, we've got celebrities backing multi-million, multi-billion dollar companies. But the people, there's only going to be a certain amount of people who can use those. And actually, for the UK, most people will be using the NHS. And, where is that balance coming in at the lower end? Where is that balance coming in for, you've already got your diagnosis and now you've got to wait. And the people who can't afford private treatment to, if you hear that you've got cancer and you can afford to not wait 2 months, you would go, I'm going to go private if I have the money to do it. So it just feels a bit dystopian, and hopefully that'll change after this probe, or, whatever the future has for the Labour government and the NHS.
It's an interesting point. And also, like, it's weird for, I think, people that want to innovate as well, because I look at people at universities now that are or even people that are involved in like tech transfer post-university, or trying to commercialize new research, or have just ideas for like, oh, here's a great idea for a piece of technology that would definitely solve a problem. And it's weird for those people too, because that, you come up against like, oh, here's the system you've got to put it into. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, that won't work for all these million reasons. And unfortunately, it's just not that attractive, I don't think, to join an NHS management graduate scheme, to spend years and years through that to get to an eventual point of being able to change, and then get bogged down by 1,000 emails a day and just worry about like stuff that means that actually innovating and changing things is not really going to be high up on your agenda, versus just getting the job done so you keep your job. So it's a very interesting landscape, I think, and a very difficult problem to solve. I can remember when I was at digitalhealth.london, and that's an accelerator for people that don't know, that essentially takes health tech startups every year and helps them with market access to the NHS. So startups are selected based on their ability to help the NHS, and it's an accelerator that connects them with the right people, thoughtful introductions to make innovation happen, sort of like a hand-holding exercise for adoption, if you will. And I can remember being there and just learning this lie of the land, and learning that it just wasn't as simple as people thought. And I can remember those innovators at the time, and we were early in the digital health days, perhaps back then, but it was really shocking to people when they had a great technology, a great product that they had tested, and they had trialed it, and it works. And they were like, okay, cool. Now just introduce me to everyone that's going to buy it, because it works. It's ROI positive over 12 months, 18 months, whatever, in-year savings. It will help in these lots of ways. So just introduce me to everyone. And that was always the ask. Just introduce me to everyone and they'll buy it. And it was like, and we had to sit there and be like, well, we've just learnt this too. Like, that's sort of not the way it works. Like, and they're like, why? Well, surely because it works and it's ROI positive. It will save money, and it works. It's better for everyone. Just do it. And you had to be like, no, for all these like nondescript reasons, like, they sometimes they don't have the money, and sometimes you need these information governance approvals that are going to take 2 years, and sometimes you need this, and sometimes you need this. It was I take your point, Daisy. It's dystopian and weird that you've got all this, like, in one corner you've got people talking about quantum computing, and in the other corner you've got, we haven't got the money to just get this fax machine taken away from the hospital. Like, it's a very bizarre place, and actually trying to be in the middle of that is the job that needs doing. That's the adoption frontier. The technology frontier, we're pushing way forwards. Just new tech's cool, it's great. But the adoption frontier of what can actually be adopted, that's where the difficult stuff is, because it's a multifaceted, complex problem that's sadly quite dull to solve. But hey, Lord Darcy's on it with a new probe. So
I think the concept, or the idea of what this investigation will uncover, I think, is quite frightening. And I worry about the implications of that. And I do think ultimately it's good, but I also think that it's going to cause, it's going to ruffle feathers, and I think it's going to cause upset in a way that James has talked about, trickle down and all of that kind of thing. Not in a trickle down economics effect, but I think particularly when the most senior echelons of, it will be all echelons of the NHS, but when it comes to the most senior echelons of the NHS and, you know, the government that is responsible for healthcare, you know, the Department of Health and Social Care and other departments and arm's length bodies, I think it's unsettling, and that they will be unsettled, and I think that will be felt down through the organisation. That's not to say it's the wrong thing to do. I just think at a time where there is already chaos and ill feeling and people are desperately unhappy on the front line, I guess maybe what I'm saying is I think there's an important comms job to do around it, which is clearly people will know and understand that this is being done for the right reasons, and so that positive change can be made. But I think people are likely to be angry at the findings. And I think that could, in the short term, add fuel to the fire that is already raging, because people are going to have an emotional reaction to it. And I'm straying a bit from Healthtech here, and thinking about healthcare broadly. But I do just find it an unsettling prospect about what it uncovers and the reactions around that across, and how that ripples out across healthcare.
Personally, I don't feel too concerned by that. I think the way that the way I can see that report being written is that they're not going to commit political suicide. So what they're not going to say is there's two answers: double the budget or privatise it. That's definitely what they're not going to say, even though there are plenty of people that can argue for both of those things. I think it's more going to be, it's going to say the workforce are the crown jewel of this organisation and must be protected. They must have their jobs. They must have their jobs protected. They are the ones that are holding this whole thing up. We must do everything we can to support them. That's probably what it's going to say. Number one. Then it's going to say, okay, for patients, here are the big problems. And I'd hope it then just goes quite tactically to say, like, okay, for urology outpatients, here's a thing that we can do. For this blah, here's the thing we do. Like, I can see them perhaps doing that rather than them. If they start trying to address the big questions, they're going to be into the double the budget or privatise it stuff, and they don't want to be hinting or suggesting, because either of those don't work right now, like, or ever. You can safely say that never are those things going to work for a government in power to suggest, because you just kneecap yourself either way. So I think they're going to have to be very tactical with it. They're going to have to find a way to acknowledge all the people that need to be acknowledged on the ground floor so that no one does get disgruntled. and to just have some really tactical things. And everything that I've seen of the Labour Party or heard of the Labour Party is that, Keir Starmer's a doer. He gets things done. Okay, we don't have like pithy slogans, but let's just get him into power and he'll just do things. He's changed the Labour Party. He's changed the prosecution service. He's changed the. So like, it seems that from a leadership perspective, that's what they're trying to emanate here. That's what they're trying to show people, is that they just get things done. I've even seen, like, I actually think, you talk about it being a good comms job, right? Do you know, I actually saw, the reason I know this report exists is because I either saw it on Instagram or TikTok. I can't remember which. That's the reason I know that this report existed. I saw it this morning on one of those platforms, and I was like, oh, I've not just seen that announced on Instagram, have I? And then I Googled it and I was like, oh, this has been announced. This is Lord Darcy. This is West Streeting that's done it. And I was like, okay, interesting. I saw, I definitely saw a TikTok of Ed Miliband saying, you didn't think anything was possible in 48 hours? Here's what I've just done in 48 hours. This piece of thing, done, changed, next. We're on to the next thing. Just like quite a funny, decent video from Ed Miliband, who also is hilarious. Like, rate the guy. Like, really enjoy watching him. So like, they seem to be trying to put out, both at the kind of like TikTok level, but also at the I've just commissioned a report from Lord Darcy level of just getting things done here. That suggests to me that whatever they write in there is going to be quite tactical. They're always going to be up against the inertia of policy and those arm's length bodies and the speed at which they go. And the list of recommendations at the end of that report is then going to go to each of NHS England and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And each of they are going to have to write a report with their recommendations. And eventually, though, it will have to, some things will be recommended and those things will get done. That is how policy works. And there is great work that happens in policy that turns things around. And actually, I'm interested to see it. I'm not going to say I'm excited to see it, because like we all know what happens with most of these things. They sit on a shelf and gather dust and not much gets done. But if it's the same as some other things that I'm seeing happening, like maybe there are a few things that get done here.
Yeah. And just to clarify, if it's a report like that, which I think for the most part it probably will be, that isn't where my concern comes from. My concern comes from the fact that we've had a party in government who have done some less than admirable things, behaved in less than admirable ways, and they have been found criminally guilty in some cases of some behaviours that we would not expect of people in government. My fear is that more of that kind of thing becomes uncovered. And that, I think, is where my nervousness sits, that there's uproar if more is revealed from that respect. But I think the kind of report that you're talking about, which probably will have very few surprises in it. I think we're all pretty clear on the lay of the land with the NHS and where we all believe the priority should be. I think that would be relatively unsurprising. I think you're right that the recommendations will be the important thing, but actually how they're acted upon the most critical, and these things take time. To join those 2 points together is that this is a really serious topic, and it is encouraging to see that Labour are taking it seriously too, but it's encouraging also to see that they are going to not necessarily great lengths. How hard is it really to put a TikTok up, publish a TikTok or whatever, but to be human about it. And of course they're not all like that, but I mean, with the exception of the run into the election, I've not really seen that kind of content from political parties or MPs on social media channels like that. And I think Jess Phillips does the same as well. She does a really good job of creating that kind of accessible content that makes you feel like you understand what her job is, what she's doing, and the impact she's at least trying to make. So it'll be exciting to see more of that. I hope that they double down on that.
And finally, we were going to talk about a Nature paper, but we've run out of time. I'll summarise it for you. They've looked at a load of different papers for are digital health interventions, any good for lowering high blood pressure? The answer is yes. They're fine. They certainly do it. The actual full Nature paper is linked in the newsletter this week if you want to go and have a look at it. As I say, TLDR, yes, they work. That has been Healthtech Pigeon for this week. Thank you, Jess. Thank you, Daisy. Thank you, Adama. We'll be back with you next week. If you want to grab the links to any of the stories talked about today, you can head to healthtechpigeon.com. We've also got Biotech Dodo, by the way. That's the biotech version of this. No podcast just yet, but I believe it's coming. You can get episode 3 or 4, wherever we are on that this week. And if you want to sponsor Healthtech Pigeon, we're taking those too. If you want to get a featured job, featured bit of value for the Healthtech community, give us a shout. We're not going to put any spam in there, but let us know. We've got a sponsorship deck that we can send you. Otherwise, have a lovely week.